today, we will also be honouring one very special volunteer for their contribution to the pro-life movement, so stay tuned for that. And now I'll pass you back to Sheila to introduce our first speaker.
So, I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Margaret Naughton, here today. Dr. Naughton works as a clinical pastoral educational supervisor and healthcare chaplain at University Hospital Kerry. We saw this week that the report of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Assisted Dying was debated in Dáil Éireann. In 2023, Dr. Naughton gave evidence before the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Assisted Dying, asserting that legislation to permit assisted suicide, euthanasia, would gravely undermine the right to life and genuine health care. She speaks from a place of expertise in this area, as well as a breadth of personal experience through her work in Kerry Hospital. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Naughton.
At 4'11", microphones are always too high. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you today in a city that is very close to my heart. I spent many years here in Cork at UCC, so I always love an opportunity to come back to Cork. So I suppose my few words today, and I'm delighted to get an opportunity to give you an insight into my experience and my work, and I hope my passion for this area will come across too today. I'm going to start my few words with just a little reframing or a little review of the statement that we presented to the Houses of the Oireachtas in December, and then I hope to speak a little bit out of my own experience working as a healthcare chaplain for the last 15 years and as an educator of future generation chaplains. And apologies to any of you who've read the statement and may know the statement nearly better than I do myself at this stage, but I always think it's good to have something to ground our conversation and reflection in. So I suppose a real important starting point for us when we were putting together the statement last December was a reminder that care, compassionate care of the sick and the dying is an integral part of the Church's mission. And we know that, we see that from any delving into Scripture, Jesus' primary ministry was amongst the sick, amongst those who needed support and compassion. As a Catholic community, and as a church community, we are deeply opposed to the deliberate ending of life at any stage. And a reminder, I suppose, a very strong thread of our statement was a reminder that life is a gift which we hold in trust at all times and at all stages, from beginning to natural end. And I guess our insight or our motivation for what we ended up putting together was a conversation around the common good and how detrimental implementing any type of, legislation that would go against the common good. The state has a responsibility to uphold the common good, and assisted dying, assisted suicide undermines the common good as we see it in 4 different ways. Hope and healing in the face of terminal illness. People can be helped to express and experience human growth and spiritual development and find inner peace even in the face of a terminal diagnosis. Our second point, the holistic care for terminally ill patients who may come to see themselves as a burden to family or to self. So motivated here is a compassionate and caring approach to the care of the terminally ill and the dying. Assisted dying, assisted suicide also brings into, really challenges the whole integral component of trust in healthcare. If any of you have ever worked in healthcare, any of you have experienced being part of healthcare, trust is an integral part of what we're about. If you don't trust your doctor, if you don't trust your chaplain, if you don't trust your nurse, then there is no relationship. So assisted dying, assisted suicide brings into conflict the trust that healthcare is built upon. And finally, when we move into a liberalisation or any perceived liberalisation of care of the sick and the dying, we open the floodgates to all sorts of challenges to the dignity and respect of the human person at all stages in life, but certainly in the face of a terminal diagnosis. So that very quick summary of the statement that we would have presented to the House of the Oireachtas last December. So now I want to move more, I suppose, from the head to the heart, if you like. That journey often can be a complex one, but I hope I'm going to speak at this stage away from the head, but more into the heart, and from the experience of ministering to people over the last 15 years who are facing their own, I suppose, their own mortality and the end of their own natural life. So just to say, coming from a place of ministering to people from a pastoral care perspective, what's integral to what we're about is compassion. And I think sometimes in the maybe the difficulty and the emotive aspect of this whole debate, sometimes we can forget about compassion. But I believe that as a chaplain, we begin to accompany those who are sick and dying from a place of compassion, from a place of deep empathy, from meeting people where they're at, by giving them an opportunity to tap into their own inner resources. Oftentimes, I think, we talked a little bit in our statement about hope and healing, but I think very often it can be hard, understandably so, to find hope in the face of death, hope in the face of a devastating diagnosis, hope in the face of deep uncertainty. And yet I think what I feel a lot of our work is about is accompanying people with hope, with compassion, helping them to see that even in the face of a terminal diagnosis, even in the face of maybe uncertain future, that hope can be found. Now, I'm in no way, demeaning the suffering and the struggle that comes with this. And I'm not here as an expert, and I'm not here to, in any way dismiss the struggle and the pain of facing a terminal diagnosis, of facing an uncertain future. But ultimately, where we all need support is when we are devoid of meaning, when we are devoid of hope. And oftentimes I think we might all be guilty, and I certainly am guilty of it as a practitioner, of focusing or overly focusing on the suffering component of, or maybe the loss of such a diagnosis, or the loss of someone's mortality in the face of a diagnosis. But ultimately, and I know from my own experience, great hope, great meaning can be found within the context of something as devastating as realising that your life is coming to a natural end. And yet, I believe as Christians, we believe we are Easter people, we are resurrection people. And I think part of our message is to bring that to the bedside, to bring it to the pastoral context, to remind people that in their struggle, in their challenge to make sense of what's going on for them, that actually hope can still be harnessed, that meaning can still be found, that their life has value no matter how long their life is going to last. It's a challenge, and I think more and more as the conversation around assisted dying, assisted suicide gathers momentum, it's almost offered as an alternative. And yet I can genuinely say this, and I say this with no sense of insincerity. In 15 years, I think I've only spoken to one person who, in the face of a terminal diagnosis, would wish that that option to end their own life, would be there for them. I think most of us, we operate out of that palliative care axiom, living well naturally until the very end of life. And I think most of us in healthcare strive to do that. Now, of course, we're human. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we're not as good at it maybe as we could be. But we do strive to meet people where they're at. We strive to see them as in their inherent dignity and worth as a human person, and we strive to see them as made in the image and likeness of God. And coming from that space, I think we offer them an opportunity to do a life review, to explore their own story, to find meaning in their own story, to find meaning in their own experience. So all life has value, no matter what. And I suppose in my own ministry over the last number of years, I've had a great, and I always say that the complement, spiritual, pastoral, emotional, of the sick and the dying is a great privilege. And coming from that space, I've had great privilege to minister to people across the spectrum. People who are people of faith, people who are maybe struggling with faith, people who are young, people not so young. And all they want, generally what they want, is to be heard, to be supported, to be encouraged, to be empowered in some way to make sense of what's going on for them. Because I think, we draw from Friedrich Nietzsche, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And I think when meaning can be found in the gravest of situations, people can find peace. People can find solace. They come to a place of usually natural acceptance of what's going on for them. It can be a very painful place. It's not easy to find yourself in that place of agony. I often refer to that place of agony in the garden for people who are trying to make sense of what's going on for them. So coming from that place, I suppose that place of pastoral care, that place of spiritual accompaniment, is an awareness. I suppose it drives my passion to try and articulate and verbalise maybe the complexity of this overall debate in terms of the assisted dying. It is an emotive issue. It is a challenging issue. It is one where oftentimes it can be difficult to defend in the face of human suffering. But that said, as Christians, we are called to accompany people just as Jesus did, with compassion, non-judgmentally, with empathy and with mercy. And I hope that as this debate continues, that each of us, wherever we find ourselves on the continuum of this debate, that at all times our discussions will be framed not with judgment, not with condemnation, not with anger, but with heartfelt compassion, mercy and empathy. And my final point today is maybe, as it was mentioned earlier, we're looking at maybe a general election fairly soon. There's all sorts of discussions out there at the moment in the public square about this issue. But my call to each of you is to dig into that place within ourselves where we hold our own judgments, where we hold our own value system, and dig into it and remember that for each of us, that this whole area is not just something we're called to reflect on, maybe to defend, depending on where you're at, but that it is for us an ethical and moral responsibility. In fact, I would say it's an ethical and moral imperative that we continue this conversation. Because if we don't continue this conversation, we know where this is going to go. So it does take great courage. A number of people said to me during the week, I can't believe you're going out and you're going to talk about this on Saturday. It does take courage. Sometimes it's easier to keep quiet and hold silent. But we have a call. Jesus made it difficult for each of us. Christianity is difficult. It's a difficult call to defend the other, to defend those who are struggling, to defend the voiceless, to defend those on the margins. And yet, Father Gregory Boyle, a Jesuit priest in America, speaks very much about going to the margins, not to fix, not to sort, but to be transformed ourselves. And I firmly believe the more passionate we are, the more we go out there and advocate on this issue, hopefully we will bring about great change, but also each of us will be transformed in a very meaningful way. Because when we touch the wounds of another person, we are truly transformed in a very meaningful, authentic and congruent way. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Norton, for that input and for your work on this issue, which we will be watching closely over the coming months, and we are very grateful for your insights and advice to us all. Our next speaker was elected in June of this year as Limerick City Councillor for Ain 2. She is well known and highly respected as a tireless and effective advocate for the most vulnerable in society and is a strong defender of the right to life. She runs a weekly homeless outreach on the streets of Limerick, is passionate in helping people with drug addictions, and is also known for her work in championing animal welfare. She is driven by a belief that all human life is precious and worthy of protection, both born and unborn. I'm delighted to introduce, all the way from Limerick, Councillor Sarah Beasley.
Thanks very much, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. I have a speech, but I'm actually going to tell you my story of how I have the badge of honour that is pro-life that I'm so proud to wear. I was educated in England by the Dominican nuns, and we were terrified of them. And everything the nuns told us to do, we did. And I think there was no sex education from the nuns, but what they did one day is took all the girls out of the classroom, and we had to sit there and watch this reel of film. And it was actually in Calcutta. And it was Mother Teresa and the nuns with her going into a hospital and taking babies that were aborted out of a bucket, and they were alive. So that really had a huge effect on my life, but I didn't realise it at the time. So I suppose fast track to when I moved back to Ireland, I didn't think abortion was an issue, because in England it was just every day. It was just an everyday thing. It was just used as contraception. So in my mind, it was just something that happened, and I never thought anything of it. From the minute I could walk and talk, all I ever wanted to do was work with animals. I had a passion for an injured bird or an injured frog. Or one time I brought a bat home, much to my mother's horror. But I had this thing that they were the most vulnerable, this weak animal that needed to be looked after. So anyhow, I moved back to Ireland. I lived in Dublin. I had a great social life. Everything was fine. Came home to Limerick to have my son, who's now 22. And I went to work for a political party. And I was the constituency secretary. And I loved my job. We were helping people in hotels that were homeless. We were getting diagnosis for children with autism. It was the best job I've ever had. And I was embedded into what that political party said and did. So fast track to 2018, and I'm sitting in the office with all my colleagues and friends, and this abortion started to come up. And I was like, lads, why are we talking about it? And I must have been asleep since I moved back to Ireland. But anyhow, it started, a conversation was being had, and this political party didn't know what way people were going to vote. So they sat, and they sat, and they sat, and it was being discussed in front of me, but I just carried on working. I said, I'll say nothing. And one day, eventually, they realised that the vote was most probably going to pro-choice. So the leader of the party came out and said, now, this is what we're doing. We're going to go with the people, and we're going to be pro-choice. So I sat there that day, and I said, look, I feel really uncomfortable with this. And they said, why? I said, because I don't believe in abortion. It's wrong, killing a life. And they said, but you can't be pro-life. And I said, what's pro-life? Because life is life. And from that day onwards, for 2 months, I was bullied, I was ostracised. It was just a horrible experience. So I went out sick for a very long time. So I'm out sick, and all the people that I thought my friends and colleagues weren't. And then it was rumbling around Limerick of this person that I was, and all I was pro-life. So I sat out sick, and I reached out to Paddy Tabine, who is my friend and my mentor. And Paddy was going through exactly the same thing. In the same political party, we couldn't be who we wanted to be. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm out sick. Paddy didn't have that option. So we met, and there was other people around the country that had our views as well. And we decided, once we'd split away from that political party, that we were strong enough. We were angry after the abortion came in, that we wanted to make a difference. So we formed Dane 2. And now we are we're a good political movement. We've done really, really well. I fought very, very hard for my seat, knocking on doors when people realised you're pro-choice, or sorry, pro-life, I should say, and you're trying to explain why I am. And I always say to them, I feed the homeless, the most vulnerable. I protect life, the most vulnerable. I love animals, and I protect them, the most vulnerable. And this is what we're all here for. Every single person has been on a journey to actually turn around and put that badge on and say, I'm proud to be pro-life, against everybody, all the odds. All my friends were like, oh, Sarah, you're so backward, you're so Catholic, you're so conservative. I'm not at all. I'm actually way out thinking, and, but this is embedded into me. That's what the nuns most probably were trying to do. They weren't, back in those days, there was no sexual education. So seeing these babies alive in a bucket and the nuns take them out to give them life. So it's really important now that I suppose I'm here to say I'm in an inch of the fourth seat in Limerick City. The Green Party are rocky, and I'm nearly there, but I don't have canvassers or leafleters. I need everybody that knows someone in Limerick to help out, because if we get that seat, that's another pro-life TD, within the door. How strong would that be? And how strong would it be to have a female TD to turn around and say, this is why I'm protecting life, from the unborn to the elderly, and with this assisted dying, I have family members, and it's rife in our family, dementia. So are these people now going to be a burden on society? If the fair deal doesn't go straight in, the family can't afford it. Is this what's going to happen? Is this going to be what the fair deal means, that they'll actually be put to sleep? And working as a veterinary nurse, and the whole thing as a practitioner of animals is that you're trying to save their life or put them out of pain. And it's an awful thing to take a life, and that's just an animal. So can you imagine taking the life of an old person or someone with dementia, or someone like in some of the countries where there is assisted dying, that someone with autism or mental health would go and actually have their life taken? So we have the responsibility. We have an election now in the next 7 weeks, and I'm begging every single one of you, we need help. Aim to and nearly there with at 4% in the polls. That means there's another 3 TDs seats there for the taking. But I can't do it all on my own. I'm canvassing 6 hours a day. I'm doing council work. I'm doing constituency work. We're picking up queries on the door. And even if people are uncomfortable with canvassing, leafleting is so easy to do. All you have to do is ask your local person running for pro-life, can I have 400 of your leaflets? And they'll tell you where to put the leaflets in the door. We need to get the message out. And the reason I got elected wasn't because I was pro-life. It was because people saw me feeding the homeless. And I said, besides the unborn, these people are so vulnerable. In Limerick City, the crack cocaine is so strong now. Within a month, girls are losing their teeth. Their skin is disastrous. Their hair is falling out. They're prostituting themselves. These kids are 16 years of age, and they've got into this drug area because what's happening is they're being mules to the big dealers. So from 10 or 11 years of age, they're getting the, Canada Goose jacket or the Rolex watch by one of the big drug dealers, and they're shifting the drugs out into the suburbs. And then they realise they'll take a little bit of this and they'll take a little bit of that, and all of a sudden they're hooked. They're on the streets. And many a time I've seen a car pull up and take a young, vulnerable girl that's on drugs into the car, and we know what the end game is there. So look, I'm just imploring all of you, please, 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 if you know anybody, I desperately want to get that seat because I desperately want a pro-life TD in Limerick City. Thanks very much for your time.
That was that of your party colleagues in Aintu. We wish you all the very best in the up-and-coming general election. So I'm delighted now to be welcomed over to this area with Felicia, Tara and Diego, who are 3 of our student pro-life activists this year. And they're going to tell us a little bit about what is going on for younger people in the pro-life movement in Ireland. So guys, if you'd like to come up and join me over there, thank you. Great stuff. This is nice and cozy in this corner over here now. We can pretend we're on our own. So thanks so much for joining us today. I might start with you, Felicia. And I know that you recently participated in the Lifelines summer tour. Maybe you might just tell all the audience about the summer tour. What's it all about?
Yes, thank you so much. That's a great question. So basically the Lifelines tour is set up with different pro-lifers. It was great. We got to meet with older members of the pro-life campaign. This year we were mainly in Cork and Limerick and in a town here in Cork in Youghal, where we had like a garden party as well, again with pro-life representatives, which was great as well. But yeah, it was an amazing week. It was one of the best things I've done in my life, I think, so I'm very happy that I did it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Felicia. And I know there are lots of Lifelines Tour alumni here today volunteering and lots of Lifeline Tour guys who have been interning with us. You might just tell everyone here today if people are interested or if they know any young people that might be interested in taking part. Is it going to be happening again? What do they do?
Yes, so I think it happens every year and planning on coming in next year as well, if it's at all possible for them. And we did bowling, we went on a boat ride as well with a tour guide, which was amazing. Yeah, and the friendships that come from it as well are amazing. There's a few of us here as well, so I'm very glad that we stuck together after it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I know that some very firm, long-lasting friendships have formed as a result of taking part in it, so it's lovely to hear it. I'm going to pass over to Tara there now. Tara, I know that you have also participated in the Lifelines tour.
Yes.
You have also interned with the Pro-Life campaign. I know that you've helped me and you were fantastic. But I know that today you're just going to talk to everybody about a fantastic initiative that we run that some people may not be aware of, which is the Future Leaders Programme. You might tell everyone about that, Tara.
Yes, of course. For everyone who doesn't know, the Futures Leaders Programme is a 5-year, 5-month tour. And it involves many young people coming together to participate in many activities. There's team building exercises. It mainly focuses on building their communication skills, activacy, and their knowledge in our pro-life cause. There is participate actively. This is a fantastic way to get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Tara. And is there a programme running at the moment currently?
There is, yes. There is one ongoing and there will be one in the new year. If anyone is interested, please go to the stall during lunch, the Future Leaders Programme stall. And please contact the programme coordinator, Stephen, if you have any other queries about it.
Very good. And if anybody is interested in either of the programmes, you can go onto our website, prolifecampaign.ie, for more information. And finally, Diego, I think I'm great that I came all the way from Sligo, but where did you come from, Diego?
I came all the way from California in the United States. So, yeah, I'm here.
Well done, Diego. You might just tell us a little bit about yourself and what has brought you here to Ireland.
Absolutely. So initially I came to work with Net Ministries. I'm still a missionary with Net Ministries. But this year the Pro-Life campaign and Net Ministries have teamed up together to create the first ever Pro-Life campaign team. And I got the pleasure to be placed on with 4 other young people. We're living in Ladysbridge in County Cork in this beautiful place called Munchavira. It's right by the beach, super beautiful. And yeah, we've been doing a lot of grassroots activism, faith outreach, and we're working on doing some student outreach as well with Students for Life. So, yeah.
Great stuff. So you're basically helping the Pro-Life campaign for this year with Net Ministries.
Yeah.
I know that you're planning on helping out with the Student Summit, another event that the Students for Life organise. Mm-hmm. You might maybe just tell us a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So the annual Students for Life Summit happens every February. So the next one will be occurring February 2025, and it's in the Glencomera House there in County Waterford, County Tipperary area. Yeah, we're looking to have 40 students come out to the event. It's a beautiful forest countryside. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the area. But yeah, like I said, we're looking to have 40 students and non-students from the ages of 18 to 26. It's going to be
just some of the many young pro-life people that are involved with the pro-life campaign and the pro-life movement broader. So thank you so much. I know that you're volunteering today, so thank you so much for all of that. I'm going to pass you over now to John Bryan, who is going to talk to us about canvassing.
An absolutely amazing result. They are councillors who either publicly supported the pro-life side in the abortion referendum or gave public commitments before the recent elections to support measures aimed at reducing Ireland's soaring abortion rate. They publicly support the strengthening of freedom of conscience protections for everyone, all healthcare workers. And in principle, they support restoring legal protection for unborn babies when it's attainable. It was a terrific election result, and not one that you'll read about in the national media, unfortunately. We should take heart from it nonetheless, as it shows what's possible against the odds. With the general election now just weeks away, there's no time to waste in getting behind pro-life candidates running for the Dáil and doing everything we can to ensure as many of them as possible are elected. Now, signing up to canvass is the ideal way to help. But if canvassing isn't your thing, then consider leafleting door to door instead, or outside churches, or managing social media campaigns, or even fundraising. There's no shortage at all of ways to help. Now, one way or another, we all need to be extremely busy and active in reaching voters between now and election day. If you haven't canvassed recently, let me just say that it's not as diabolically dull as you might think. It can actually be a lot of fun canvassing in a general election. It's a much more positive experience than what the abortion referendum was for us. It covers a lot more of a varied issues. As a canvasser, a leafleter, or whatever, contact your local pro-life candidate. Ask them where they need you the most. Now, it was alluded to earlier, and I don't need to spell it out to you, the massive difference having more pro-life TDs in the Dáil would make to expose the truth of what is happening under the current abortion regime and to bring about significant change. It was heartening to see pro-life people active in the local elections, but in honesty, more should have stepped forward. Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending human liberty at a time when it's in its most peril. We can't shrink from this responsibility. We have to welcome it. We will all step forward this time around. There is very little time left. Every moment is precious. So let's give it our all. And finally, to sign up to canvass or leaflet, please come to the PLC stand outside during the break, and I genuinely hope I see you all there. So, thank you very much.
So we're going to have a quick break now for half an hour. The tea and coffee pod is downstairs, so do make your way down and grab something to eat or drink. But we encourage everyone to come back as quickly as possible in order to get the benefit of the information stands to the left and right, and to be able to chat together. There are some amazing stands here today highlighting support and political work that is going on, so do make sure you take the time to have a look at them. And we're running a little bit late today, so if you can be back here at 2:10 sharp, that would be brilliant. Thank you.